to call the meeting to order at 1:15 p.m. Boy, have we been awaiting this day with some enthusiasm for quite some time, and I know it's 5.5 years ago this topic was discussed about the need to renovate and rehabilitate this building, and certainly thank you to all past board members and current board members, all of whom maintain their support for the project all along the line. I see Member Mackey recalls those first conversations, and I think would echo that comment that never was there any dissension about the need to face the required improvements to the building to fix and enhance the function of it. And we were unanimous all along the way. So it's been a good long journey getting here today. And boy, we're very, very proud to be able to be sitting in here, the board meeting for the first time in the new building. I would say thank you to the work of LaBelle and Boulian, who has been with us, the architects, for several years from some of those early renderings. The first proposal that came in on what they could do for the Conservation Authority and how they worked with Tim and staff all along the way, and with Alan Hastings to complete the vision and execute on it. To Alan Hastings, thank you very much for the construction work, for working very closely with staff here, particularly Ian and Tim and all other staff. I think we were, it was a very collaborative project all along the way, I think, in terms of listening to staff and adapting and you know, maintaining the project financially within tight budget constraints and leaving us in a good spot where we are today. To the County of Grey for allowing us to accommodate or to locate ourselves up there while we were moved out of the building for the work. So certainly thank you to the county, and thank you to the city of Owen Sound for providing the financing and the comfort that the board of directors and the authority could move forward with the project, and it being looked after in a financially sustainable and protected manner. So that was certainly, there were some challenges early on in terms of locating that financing source, and it was great that the city was able to step up and provide that for us. And most importantly, to all great Sauble staff for their contributions, for their patience, and for their enthusiasm on getting back to this building, allowing us to put in the reinvestment necessary, and being able to locate themselves temporarily downtown and await the finished product. So thank you very much from the board of directors to all of the staff for their work. And with that, before advancing through into the next item in the agenda, is there any comments, remarks from board members? Member Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You summed it up very well, but you know, it's very impressive walking in today. Very impressed. You know, as a member of the build committee, you know, we saw it partway through the process, and it was looking good then, but it's certainly been complemented. You know, Ian and Tim, thank you very much on behalf of the build committee for keeping us updated all the time. Ian, the pictures, you know, we felt like we knew what was going on, and for any municipal or quasi-municipal project to come in close to budget or on budget, I'm not sure where we just finished up, but we were really close. You know, hats off to everyone involved for doing that. That's a feat in itself. So anyway, we have a wonderful spot here now, and I'm glad everybody's home. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Member Mackey. Any other comments from board members? And I should just mention for the record that Member Hall is not participating in the meeting today. Otherwise, we are all in person in the building. Enthusiastically in person. Yeah, building. So, not seeing any further comments there. Next item, I'd like to just acknowledge with respect the history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe, the people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation who have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewas of Saugeen and the Chippewas of Nawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis whose ancestors shared this land and these waters. May we all as treaty people live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all of its diverse peoples. Item 2 is the disclosure of pecuniary interest. Is there any items to be noted? Member Shaw, Vice Chair Shaw.
I'm sorry, I do have a conflict of interest on the expenses, again, for the stewardship grant. Which I was confused seeing it on this list again, but yeah, so I think I should abstain from voting on that one.
No problem, noted. Any other items? Not seeing any. One can be mentioned if it should arise later at that time. Item 3 is call for additional agenda items. Any additional items today? Not seeing any. Item 4, adoption of the agenda. Do I have a mover to adopt the agenda? Member Dubik has so moved. Member Farmer has seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Item 5 is the full authority minutes of May 27th, 2026. Any comments to those minutes? Not seeing any, so I would seek a mover to approve those minutes. And Member Winters, seconded by Member Urick. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 6 is business side of the minutes. We have none at this time, so we are down to item 7, which is the consent agenda. And I will just separate the expense statement from the permits, committee minutes, and media component, and just have 2 motions to receive for information. So save and accept the receipts and expenses. Do I have a mover to receive for information? Member Day, seconded by Member Mackey. Any questions? All those in favor? That's carried. And the receipts and expenses, which is 7, item 2. Any questions? And a motion to receive for information. Member Winters, seconded by Member Farmer. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we are down into the business items under 8. The first of which is a 2026 reserve draw request. And I will pass it over to Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've had 2 expenses come up this year that are outside of budget, and we'd like to draw from the reserves to cover these expenses. And these, consistent with our procurement policy and good practice, we wanted to bring this to the board for a resolution to do this. So the 2 items are detailed in the report that's been provided, but at a high level, we had an incident, a near miss incident late last fall at the Arboretum barn. There's an earthen ramp that goes up into the barn, and we had our volunteers parking a golf cart that the Arboretum Alliance uses in there, and they accidentally reversed instead of going forward, and they went off the side of a portion of the ramp lower down. So fortunately, very luckily, nobody was injured, or nobody was badly injured, a couple of bumps and scrapes because of this, but it did draw it to our attention that we need to make some changes both procedurally and physically to make sure that that this doesn't become an issue again. So we have made these internal changes in terms of procedures, but one of the actions that we want to take is that the golf cart that the Arboretum Alliance uses and the riding lawnmower that they use are no longer part of the barn structure itself, to completely eliminate this risk of hazard. And to accommodate them instead, we've had discussions with the Arboretum Alliance, and where we've landed is on a 12 by 16 shed structure. So it meets size requirements for not requiring a building permit under the building code, but is sized enough that they can keep their implements in there. Cost of that shed is around $8,000. We would be splitting the cost with the Arboretum Alliance, where they would put forward 4,000 and we would put forward the other 4,000. We consider this a safety issue and pretty important, but it is outside of 2026's current budget. So we'd like to draw that from the lands reserve. And for reference, at the start of the year, the lands reserve was sitting at $937,000 minus a proposed $500,000 pull for this building. So still sitting north of $400,000 in that reserve. So the 4,000 is easily absorbed from that reserve. The other project that cost a little bit more than we expected this year is debris removal at the Clendenin Dam. So Clendenin Dam is located just southeast of the village of Clarksburg. And the dam itself is utilized to stop sheet ice and reduce ice damming in the river to thereby reduce flooding. So it's our only actual flood control dam within the watershed. Every year we budget to remove debris that collects there in the spring from in front of the dam. There was so much debris this year that the cost exceeded budget for that to the tune of just over $800. So it's not a big amount. We would propose to pull that from the dam reserve. And for reference purposes, again, the dam reserve started the year at $326,000. So the draw of about $1,000 from there can easily be absorbed within the reserve. And so through you, Mr. Chair, we recommend the motion that's presented.
Okay, thank you, Tim. Any questions, Member Farmer?
I'd be happy to move that motion. Also a question that, if I remember the report accurately, for the changes to practices around the barn, that was no volunteer access to the upper portion, or is it just that those, as was referenced, those machines will not be parked there and they'll still be, you can still walk in? Or is it, are we gonna rope that off to all of the PSCA employees?
I'm not sure that the volunteers will need to go in the upper portion of the barn anymore. They have been keeping stuff in the lower portion of the barn, and they'll also have room within the shed to store implements as well.
Member Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask a question, Tim. When we're talking about the Clendenin's Dam and the logs that you removed, if you look at from the 10th line decommissioned bridge up towards the dam, there's a tremendous amount of full-length logs that are in the river. And I don't know if they just came naturally over the dam, but I'm afraid that we may inherit them downstream. And that's where we get Frizzell ice down farther, past the Clarksburg Bridge. Or it could end up down at the Thornbury Dam as well. Is that any responsibility of Gray Sauble, or is that who's that fall under now?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I would defer to our staff team.
The Morgan or John?
Through you, Member Maxwell. So a lot of the logs do go over. When we removed them, we actually had an excavator there on site, and a couple did go over, but the majority of them were plucked and put on the side there, and then we had a bin come in and we took them, most of the stuff off site. There still is a lot of debris that we still need to remove, so a lot of debris does just go over the dam naturally, and some, when we're removing the logs, we try to remove all the logs that we can, not send anything down.
Alex?
So will that be a responsibility of the municipality to remove the debris field that gets the logs that are, I mean, there's a lot of, probably 70 of them in there. In the shallow water in the big river. So I just, in the spring, they may get washed, or later in the year, we get a big rain or something. But just how we make sure that it doesn't interfere with this Brazil waste that Clarksburg has.
So the frazzle ice, so the Clendenin Dam is actually the flood control structure, and that's where the Fraser Lake gets broken up, so it shouldn't really affect anything downstream. And I know the dam that the MNR runs closer to Thornbury, they actually do have those, buoy buffers that will collect those, any sort of logs, so it should, I don't expect it to get jammed up in their dam either.
John or Ian, any comments on Frazzle or?
I just guess from an ownership perspective, it's a natural process, the logs floating down the river. They're getting hung up on our dam, we remove them as much as possible, some would go over. It's not our responsibility to go in to remove them. If it's a concern from the Frazzle Ice perspective, then municipality could choose to go in and working with us for making sure it's being done properly. We'd like to know if municipality is going to be doing that, but it's not really our responsibility. It wouldn't necessarily be your responsibility, but it's a concern.
Thanks a lot, that helped.
Okay, thanks for the question and the response from Seth. And you'd be willing to second the motion from member Farmer to approve the recommendation in the report, member Maxwell? Would that be okay?
We're lucky that way out well, yeah.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And next item is regarding the 2027 draft budget. And back to Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you will recall, first you may notice that this is a very, very early for us to be bringing the budget forward to the board. But you will recall that we've had discussions that due to changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and the amalgamation that's pending, we do need to have the budget approved by December 31st of this year. And given the challenges that we've had in the past with quorum following the election before the start of the new year, we wanted to make sure that we got the budget approved before the election. So that means that we need to bring it to the September meeting because our October meeting is 2 days, I think, after the municipal elections. In order for us to get the required 30-day circulation period, we actually can't circulate from August, we have to circulate from July. We wouldn't have the 30 days required from the August meeting. So that means that we need to bring a budget forward in July for approval from the board to circulate to our municipal partners, to your councils. In order to make sure that you've had a good chance to review what we're proposing in the budget and provide any feedback for us, we're bringing it forward now in June so that if there are any changes that the board wants to see, that we can implement those prior to the next iteration that would come forward in July. At the last meeting, we had brought a recommendation forward to the board to temporarily alter our policy on COLA, because normally we would use July or August over August. And that wasn't going to be possible, obviously, for bringing the budget forward this time. So the board had approved last month that for this first draft iteration, we would use April over April. And that for the next one that comes forward in July, we would use May over May. So what that looks like using April over April is a 2.8% COLA increase that causes a just shy of $64,000 levy increase or a 2.8% levy increase. And that represents about a 1.1% increase over the change in modified current value assessment. Total operating budget is about a 1% increase over last year. Most of the changes in the budget are related to salary and wages associated predominantly with that COLA change, as well as you'll see a change in stewardship where we were fortunate to receive a large grant under the RALP program, Resilient Agricultural Landscapes program of over $300,000 over a 2-year period. So a portion of that is showing up in the 2027 budget. Two important notes that I would make is in the budget under education, we have included $20,000 coming from the foundation, as was discussed with the board back in March, to keep helping that program, which is being very successful and is very much appreciated in the community, which we're seeing in the feedback that we're getting from the community on that. The other thing to note is whereas April over April CPI is 2.8%, May over May CPI is now out and it's 3.3%. So just shy of 0.5% higher. We still have to remember on this, not all staff salaries are tied to levy. So some areas in our budget, as you're aware, we self-fund about 50% of our budget. And so some of those salaries are also tied to that. So we haven't had a chance to run those numbers yet, but I would expect the increase to be in the order of 5 to 10% levy, or no. $5,000 to $10,000 in levy, which would represent a total levy increase over 2025 of somewhere between 3.1 and 3.3%. I believe that this overall represents a very lean, very responsible budget over 2026, going into what we know are unknown times. So what we're trying to do is have a budget that reflects business as usual, but also helps us address the commitments that we've made through our strategic plan and the upcoming work plan that we're hoping to be able to accompany the July version, or at very least the September version that you will finally approve, so that you can see that the work plan that's going forward in 2027 ties in with the budget, and hopefully you'll have good confidence in how that budget is being spent.
Very smart saying 5 to 10%, so this 3.1 slow down, I'm not shocked, that was good.
Basketball. And the other thing I would note before I pass it back to you, Mr. Chair, for questions and comments, is that I will start arranging meetings with your councils soon for August, hopefully, and early September if August is not possible because of any council recesses. I'll start arranging those now so that by the time the July budget goes out, we've already got those meetings in place and not scrambling to get them. For you, Mr. Chair, I'd welcome any comments, questions, direction.
And I would just disclose, if there is any conversation regarding the COLA component, I'd pass the gavel to Vice Chair Shaw. Excuse myself from the discussion and declare conflict at that time. I think on paper, 1.04% increase in the operating budget. If the province sees this, they might take 440 municipalities and turn it into 40 with numbers that look that good on paper. Any comments, Member Maxwell?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering, is there any I know we're going on summer break municipalities, but being a little selfish for our municipality, we're going to have a lot of reconstruction going on, and they're using up a lot of the beaches, like in particular, except the ones that they have a relationship with Conservation Authority on. I'm just wondering on the budget side, if you could come to our council and say, you know, this is what we're doing for your municipality, it might, anything that affects the budget negatively or positively would be greatly appreciated. If you could just get out in front of that a little bit, or even send some correspondence into us and say, you know, we got this relationship with all these, you know, Peace Marsh and Glendennons, and I think there's Delphi, right? And because you're gonna be picking up a lot of the slack on some of these areas that we have been compromised on, like for when they're doing, they taken the Lower Bay Park out of commission to build the outfall pipes. They've done, there's one down at the Little Beaver Park, it's gone now. So there'd be a lot of pressure on people trying to get to water or recreation in the summer, so, and you're filling some of the void, Conservation Authority, that's what I'm trying to get at in a roundabout way, so.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly, which we've tried to do in the past too, is talk to the municipality about the benefits that are provided by
Yeah.
conservation.
Oh, thank you. You summed it up easily.
Thank you, Alex. Member Farmer.
Through the chair, what kind of directions are necessary to make sure that the circulated budget accurately reflects COLA as we know it from a year-over-year perspective. I think that it's really important that we recognize that staff retention is important and that having non-stagnant and appropriately increasing wages to reflect cost of living is important. If the need for the numbers if the need demonstrated by the May over May increases is higher than we saw for the April over April, what process is necessary to make sure that if the board wants to say, we want the circulated amount, budget increase to reflect that higher COLA amount, what's the process for us now to have that discussion?
I don't think we can have that discussion. So the board approved that at the last board meeting. So short of reopening that motion. So we would be using the May over May and bringing that forward in July. We couldn't put it into this one
Okay, so
because we didn't have that information when we put this budget together. We do have it now, just not enough to have rebuilt the budget based on that. So at the May board meeting, the board approved using April over April for this iteration of the budget and using May over May for the July iteration of the budget. So I wanted to give you a heads up on what that would look like.
okay, thank you. I misunderstood the procedure. That makes good sense to me.
Vice Chair John?
So through you, Scott, on the capital side, Tim, I know we're looking at kind of business as usual. I guess I'm just curious, is there any capital projects that we had intended to go forward with in 2027 that have been put on hold because of the changes, or was what we're seeing was kind of what the work plan said for 2027?
It's an excellent question. Yeah, what we're showing here for capital for 2027 is actually quite a bit higher than it was in 2026 because we're following the management plans that we've prepared as well as the asset management planning database that tells us when assets are coming due. So no, we're moving forward business as usual with that, and we have appropriate reserve funding, where it's shown for reserves to cover those costs. The levy portion of the capital has actually declined 2027 over 2026 by about $5,000.
And that's maybe where I was thinking we were reducing, so, okay. Appreciate it.
Member Yurt?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the obvious elephant in the room is, Lake Huron. So we're gonna be able to look proudly and say that, our contribution to this new amalgamation is gonna be a pretty reasonable budget. And again, questions you can't answer, but so August, yeah, we will be on break, so you won't be able to, in presenting a budget at that point. September is more realistic about when you'll actually be able to present to us at least. Transparency on actual other expenses that might come down the pike from where are the conversations kind of heading? And I know this is another conversation almost outside the budget, but the budget is directly impacted by it. Because every council is gonna ask, that's great that's what that increase is gonna be now. What's it really gonna be come February? And I know you can't answer the question, but are there financial talks kind of in conversation now in the preparation for the February 1st switchover?
No.
No.
And so through you, Mr. Chair, what I would say is that within the Lake Huron Region Conservation Authority, there will be 6 conservation authorities. All 6 and all 36 through the province are moving forward with the business as usual budget. So in 2027, there will be within our region 6 separate budgets for what we'll call the predecessor CAs that will continue forward. In 2028, those will roll up into one budget. And so I wouldn't expect a change in cost if there is going to be one until 2028.
So then who's going to cover the cost of the oversight, the additional oversight levels of governance that are coming into play in 27 to 28? Because aren't those going to exist?
There may, and they may be covered by OPCA. We haven't been told at this point that there'll be any costs associated with that assigned to the conservation authorities.
Okay, well. You get a year reprieve, maybe.
Send it to Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Not seeing any, oh,
No, I just wanna reiterate it, and I thank member Yuri for bringing that up, because that was a concern I had. You know, we're approving a nice looking operational budget, it's a very responsible budget, but what are the unknowns? And I'm happy to hear Tim kind of allude that 2027 will escape those additional costs and likely hang out in 2028 for municipal levy increases, so, well, thank you, member Yuri, for bringing that up.
just two questions, Tim, on the capital side myself too. The Bailey Bridge at Inglis, what's the heaviest, traffic that it would see in terms of vehicles, or what do we have to accommodate with that bridge, I guess, beyond pedestrian?
Typically right now, well, pedestrian is predominantly what it has. It also sees the tractor in the winter to clear snow off.
Okay,
And historically, when we were originally looking at renovating the English Falls Pond, the first thing we had to look at was, do we have to replace the septic system? Unfortunately, we learned we did not. But there is substantial logistical complications then. I think we did know the Bailey Bridge. You know that, but just as owners of the bridge in general, it's important to have these types of engineering reviews done so that we know the ongoing integrity of the bridge.
okay, so it still sees at least a tractor seasonally. Other question, the Arboretum Trail materials, is that just for trail improvements throughout the Arboretum Trail system, like just to the north here? Is that just simply gravel improvements, or what does that reference?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I'm actually really glad you brought that up. No, yes and no. So the trail itself was built in about 2010. And it has slowly closed in on itself with grass and whatnot over those times. So the work needs to be done to reestablish the width of that trail throughout both the trees of Grey Bruce, which is on the north side of the property, and the trees of the world, which is here around the office and on the south side of the property. But in doing that, we also want to take that opportunity to make the trail accessible from a movement perspective. And so we've been reaching out to partners. We've applied for a grant from Community Foundation Grey Bruce for capital works there. And we're reaching out to partners such as the Alzheimer's Society, Community Living. We'll be reaching out to Parkinson's Society. We've talked with Moequidon. So talking to a number of partners about collaborating on this project so that we'll have a space within the community where anybody can get out into nature regardless of their mobility needs. And there aren't many places where Grey Sauble is able to do that because a lot of our trail systems are quite rugged and beyond the capacity of doing that. So that's what that project looks like. And that's why there's a breakdown of where the funding is proposed to come from.
So is that like first step funding that could lead to substantially higher costs down the road?
No.
Okay,
No, that's looking at the whole project.
just evaluating it at this time
No, rebuilding it completely.
for $50,000. So that's not paving it,
No, that's stone dust again,
okay,
but making it meet pitch and grade as well as width requirements for, we were saying AODA, but I met with some AODA experts at Credit Valley Conservation last week. And they actually use a standard that's a bit beyond that incorporates accessibility design that different municipalities like Mississauga and Brampton may use.
okay.
So looking at those considerations as well.
That strikes me as stretching the dollar pretty good. I know John Bidorf's in this room and he's pretty good at stretching the dollar, so this must have went past John for stretching that dollar in that project. Okay, thanks for that response there. Let's flip back to the opening remarks. So we do have a motion in the report that the GSE Board of Directors receive the 27 draft budget, and that the GSE Board of Directors direct staff to bring a final draft budget to the July meeting of the board for approval to circulate to participating municipalities. Do I have a mover? Member Farmer, seconded by Member Bell. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And item C, staff retirement recognition. Back to Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to talk to the board a little bit about John Biddorf, who is in the room with us today. John, put your hand up for anybody who might not know you.
You don't know me.
So John is retiring in how many days, John?
Who said he could do that?
Next Friday. Yeah. So anyway, I've prepared some remarks here for John. John, I hope you'll bear with me if I quasi read them, just I don't want to miss anything.
Can you just stand?
It's up to you.
Maybe we should bring John up to the podium, the new podium one last time.
It's not often that we get to recognize a career that spans 40 years. So John has been with us for 40 years this year, and I think that was a benchmark that John wanted to hang on for, and we're so grateful that he did. But it is worth us taking a moment to not just reflect on this length of service, but what it's meant to both the team here and the organization as a whole. So as I mentioned, today we're here to recognize the Water Resources Coordinator, John Biddorf. John's career with Sauble Conservation Authority quite literally began at the ground level as a tree planter. From there, John moved into roles as a water resources technician, and over time, through a steady commitment, became a water resources coordinator. And this progression says a lot about John. It speaks to someone who didn't just pass through their roles, but grew with GSCA and helped to shape it along the way. When we look at John's impact, it's hard to overstate it. John was around during the Harris cuts in the mid-90s when they decimated conservation authorities and especially Sauble Conservation Authority. And over the course of John's career, he's played a central role in rebuilding and significantly expanding our water monitoring network and our flood forecasting system. These systems are now fundamental to how we serve our municipalities and protect our communities. Even more impressively, that you may not know, is that John has done this work with very, very limited resources. And Scott alluded to that a second ago. Like MacGyver, for those of us who remember MacGyver, John has a knack for making things happen with the resources that are available. And there's a certain rare skill in that. There's also quite a unique mindset that John has that values practical solutions over perfect ones and long-term results over short-term recognition. Bluntly, John makes things happen with what he has available to him. Those who have worked with John knows that he's never someone seeking the spotlight, but he's never shied away from opportunities to present his work and that of Sauble's throughout the community to various community groups. And he's always been praised for that when he does that work. John, your approach has been consistent, thoughtful, and grounded in deep understanding of the watershed and the work. Over time, that consistency has added up. It builds systems, it builds trust, and it has built GSCA into an organization that is stronger because of it. When we talk about legacy, sometimes it feels like an abstract concept, but in John's case, it's not. You can see it in the networks he helped build, and the work will continue long after he finds new projects to put his talents towards. So, John, on behalf of myself and the board and the entire organization, I want to sincerely thank you for your dedication, your expertise, and your steady contribution over the past 40 years. While the team here is certainly going to feel your absence, I suspect the network that you built will continue to perform exactly as intended and will continue to serve our communities for many years to come. You've made a lasting difference here, and to recognize that, all the work that you've done and the impact that you have had over the last 40 years. You may not know this yet, it may come as a surprise, but we'd like to name the Benthic ID or the Bug Ring in your honor.
Didn't prepare anything, but I'd like to, it is a rare opportunity to come on school, join an organization, right at the level. Seeing the dedication of all the staff through the years and work and everything that we were able to accomplish. It's just amazing to spend your whole career in the same agency and continue to advance and to just feel the support from the board and, and also the freedom to develop what I made. It's just been a great career. I'll still be able to keep my fingers in it a little bit in the future, but I'm always there for any kind of staff support or anything else that they need. So thank you very much, anybody.
Yeah, I think we're all.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, John. We know you'll still be around the building. You're gonna be watching.
Yeah. Participating. Yeah, I think, perhaps we could get a board picture with John for 40 years.
Can we do that afterwards by any metrics?
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah. Let's do that after that. Yeah. There may be some comments from board members. I know I'll just speak briefly to John. Yeah, over my 10 years approximately, I'm amazed probably at what you've been able to do on such a small budget. I mean, we just looked at next year's budget. It's amazing how you're able to expand upon that number into so many things. And I think of the watershed report cards is something right off the bat that I find so informative for myself and for community when they see it. And a lot of what's in there is stuff that you've been able to build out over the years in terms of water health and improve it. And it's a scorecard. And we always want to kind of score ourselves in terms of where we are and where we want to get to. And you've made such a contribution that kind of improve that score over 40 years. Clearly, it's just something that's important to me. And I know you're a resident in Owen Sound somewhere by the Potawatomi. I don't know if I was running the last time I saw you walking one evening, but I probably couldn't go for enough runs and find you walking in the evening and stop and spend time with you and pick your brains enough. So I just am super appreciative for any opportunity I've had personally to interact with yourself and thank you for the contributions you made in 40 years. So. Member Dave?
Yeah, briefly, if I might add, one thing I've learned over the last 4 years, learning about the municipal world, is that there's a lot of staff turnover in municipalities. And to see you stay here for 40 years, it's remarkable. And I can't think that you haven't been a foundational part of making it a good place for other people to work as well, and to build something where other people like to come and they like to stay, because I see a lot of staff staying here at Grace Sauble. So thank you for everything you've done over the years. And yeah, I hope you are able to take some time away as well and enjoy all your other projects, whatever they may be.
Member Maxwell?
I just want to thank John for the early days of starting the Beaver River Watershed Initiative. I don't know how many years ago that was, but you were there from day one. And Actually, maybe you'll still volunteer a little bit for it later. Thank you.
A great example. Member Farmer.
I just want to echo the thanks and congratulations. Yeah, old growth is important, both in forests and in organizations, and getting to sit around this table over the past few years and learn more about and get to play with some of the systems you've created. I've appreciated that so much. And also, I think it was the Haibu celebration thing 2022 when they had the big anniversary of Haibu down there. But I think shortly before I joined the board, I ran into you down at Haibu with a baby in my arms and nieces and nephews around me as you were showing us all the cool bugs in the bowls. And I think that it says a lot about your talent and skill to be able to do the frontline work with people of all ages and the back end system development. So that's really impressive, and I think that's worth saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Farmer. Member Dudek?
So John, I just wanted to say a big thank you for the Lake Management Task Force at the Municipality of Grey Highlands. Carl too, but you're sticking with us. So lots of love you too. But you know, your reputation and your dedication to water quality spills over, your responsibilities, within Grey Sauble. The fact that you're actually coming to these Lake Management Task Force meetings and you've been helping us out and provide guidance. The community trusts you, the task force trusts you, the guidance that you provide us has been so impactful. And so I do just want to, again, just thank you so much. Your dedication is just beyond Grey Sauble, but it's to this whole community. And your reputation, spills over into.
Yes. All said. So you had made a comment about formally recognizing John with a room. Should we place that in the form of a motion
We'll include it in the next.
in the subsequent report? Okay. Great. Well, that was a good part of the meeting that was missing in a lot of the body of the agenda right there. So congratulations to John. We are to item D. And I will pass it back to Tim to introduce potentially naming some of the rooms in the new building.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll keep this relatively brief, and it should be well covered in the report that you have, but we have obviously finished our renovations of the building now. And it's important that we provide the rooms with some names, both for the just simple logistics of booking a room, but also taking this opportunity to honor Grey Sauble's history, especially in light of what our future looks like, at least in terms of the name. So what we're proposing is that there are 3 primary meeting rooms within the building and a bug room, which the bug room was not included in the report intentionally. So the meeting rooms are the boardroom that we're sitting in right now, the room that is adjacent to this, which is closed off via the accordion wall, which staff and media are sitting in right now. And then as well as a smaller meeting room that we have upstairs. What we're proposing is that the boardroom be titled the North Grey Room to reflect the original conservation authority that Grey Sauble stems from. That was created back in 1957, the North Grey Region Conservation Authority. The adjacent room to it is proposed to be called the Sauble Valley Room, which reflects the next conservation authority that came along that's part of Grey Sauble, which was the Sauble Valley Conservation Authority founded in 1958. Wall is open, we can affectionately know it as the Grey Sauble Room, even in light of name changes that might be forced upon us from other places. So I think that would serve very well to recognize and honor the history of this organization, which will be turning 70 years old next year. Again, what I would consider to not be a small feat for an entity such as ourselves, especially given the changes that have happened over the years to conservation and work that's been done to reduce the capacity within conservation authorities, and conservation authorities, through the dedication and tenacity of their staff, have been able to weather that and come back stronger every time. Finally, the room upstairs is proposed to be called the Inglis Falls Room, to recognize both our flagship property, which is Inglis Falls, but also the fact that this building sits on that property. This is the Inglis Falls Conservation Area that we sit on. It's the 700 hectare parcel. Acre. So those are the recommendations for the 3 meeting rooms, and they would be signed on the outside to provide some level of permanence to that. And some examples of what those signs might look like are shown in the report, but those were done rather quickly. We will finalize those moving forward. Finally, the 4th room is a room that we've always affectionately called the bug room, but it is the benthic lab where historically John and now Elaine and future staff have used for the water sampling, summarizing work, as well as benthic ID has been a large part of that. And to something that didn't come up before, but that you might not know, another thing that John created over the years is during COVID, and we affectionately know as COVID, we couldn't have staff in a room together. And John was in the process of training another staff person on how to identify benthic. And so John was trying to figure out how can we do this. And he came to the conclusion that he could get a camera, again, at a stellar deal, that you could attach to the microscope so that Elaine, who was learning from John, could sit in a separate room and still be able to learn as John went through the benthic ID, and he could show her in detail what these bugs look like. But that wasn't good enough. So the next thing John did was put a call out to all of the conservation authorities across the province to say, if any of your staff want to learn how to do this or see the work that we're doing here, you can tune into our live stream YouTube channel while I do the work that I already have to do. And so staff from conservation authorities across the province tune in to watch John do the work he does within the bug room. And so the actual name for this is yet to be determined, because I hadn't told John about this before the meeting, and I'd like to nail it down with him what works. But I think it would be a great honor to our organization and to recognize John's 40 years if the board would agree to naming the benthic ID room in honor of John. And so through you, Mr. Chair, I'd welcome any questions, comments, or direction from the board.
Okay. Any comments from board members? Member Mackey?
I would move that recommendation.
Okay, and probably as amended with the inclusion of the John Vittor room. Okay, seconded by member Yurt. Discussion?
So 2 things. First off, wholeheartedly in favor of the naming of the room. Absolutely appropriate. And I do like the concept of North Grey and the Sauble Valley literally encompassing the broad history. I'm more inclined to give the finger to the province at the same time. Is there something we can do in the building that literally has Grey Sauble Conservation Authority in it? Again, as a memorandum to the past. So I know there will be new signage throughout the building, there will be new branding that's gonna have to come with the Huron Aspect CA. But those names are subliminally point to Grey Sauble Conservation Authority, but they don't say Grey Sauble Conservation Authority. And I know there are some organizations that when you do a rebrand, it goes whole to whatever, but they do try and still do a nod to a storied past. So I don't know what that could look like, but I'd love to see Grey Sauble Conservation Authority somewhere, that logo, that name somewhere in this building as kind of in memoriam.
Tim?
Thank you, member Yuri. I do think the 2 rooms capture it, but in addition to that, we've been talking about what is so right now we're sitting in, an almost finished project of the building, but the absolute finished product will include some embellishments, some decorations on the wall and something. So the board may recall right before we moved out of this office, we had found some old, large poster boards from past projects like the building of Clendenin Dam or things that happened at Hydro, various projects like that, and we had pinned them to the wall. What we've been talking about here is finding other pictures like that in our archives, making large prints and having them here in the boardroom. And certainly the stories that go along with images like that could reference Great Sauble Conservation Authority has.
In a historical aspect.
That's right.
Member Maxwell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I just got a question. We just went through something in our municipality where we had to develop a policy for naming rights. Are we required to have one at the Grace Sauble with a policy on naming rights and all?
Tim? So, thank you. It's a good question. We have a signage guideline that we use when an outside entity might want to name something. But for internally, I think resolution of the board is absolutely sufficient for what we're talking about here today.
Okay.
Any further discussion? Seeing any, so I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, Tim. And again, thank you very much, John. Item 9, CAO's report.
Okay, thank you. It's been busy, to say the least, since we last met. So the last time we met, we were obviously at the county building and I had reported to you that we were imminently moving back into this building. So we have done that. We officially moved on Saturday, May 30th, and we reopened our doors to the public on June 2nd. So we were closed to the public 2 days at the end of May, 1 day at the beginning of June. All things considered, moving from one office to another, I think 3 days is pretty reasonable. And very happy to be back in the building. And a big thank you to all the staff that helped out with not just the project, but with also those logistics. And so all staff had a hand in this, but most noticeably, Ian Erickson has played and continues to play a big role in the construction work that has happened and the follow-up work that's going on. And Valerie Coleman has played a substantial role in the logistics of not only moving us around, but all of the little details that go into coordinating, being in a separate space for a year and also being back in a new space. And those contributions are, don't go unnoticed. On that note, happy to take the board around the building when we finish up the meeting here today, and we can talk about that and answer any questions that you have. One thing that I mentioned we were going to be moving forward with once we moved back was a client service feedback loop. We have included that when we changed our email signatures back to reflect that we're back in this office. All staff now have a tag, a link in their email signature for a client satisfaction survey that the public can use to let us know how did you interact with Grace Sauble and how was that experience. The survey is a little more in depth than that, but that's the gist of it. And we'll be checking that information on a regular basis and then working to make any improvements that might need to come or to recognize positive feedback where that's provided. We've started pre-consultation on planned source protection plan amendments for new wells in Chesley and Durham. So neither of those are within Grace Sauble's watershed, but they are within our source protection region. And all affected municipalities and key stakeholders have been notified. And if you need any more information about that, you can reach out to our source water protection team here. Our turtle stewardship program is well underway. You may recall this from last year. It only continues to grow. People still like turtles. So with the help of volunteers, we've successfully deployed 130 nest protectors across the watershed. And we were working with Grey County, the Métis Nation of Ontario, and volunteers to make this happen. I would note that our day camp is filling up, but we do still have some spots available. So if you know anybody that would be of interest to, that you want to point them in the direction of Grace Sauble's day camp, it's always been a successful, well-loved program. So we do have a couple spots for the summer still, so please feel free to send people our way. I had the benefit of taking a tour of Maitland Valley Conservation Authority's watershed a couple of weeks ago with other CAOs from southwestern Ontario. Maitland is celebrating 75 years this year. And so they're taking every opportunity to get people out into their watershed and show them around. It's really great to see that, not only just to see how another CA operates, but this is another CA that's going to be within our region. And to see what Lake Huron looks like in their area versus ours, where we have a beautiful lakeshore of Dynamic Beach, where at Sauble Beach, they have dramatically different things with huge sand bluffs that have a tendency to slip off into the lake, and the challenges that come along with that. But it was really great to go on that tour and meet with some private landowners that have worked with Maitland over the years to improve the watershed. We've had a lot of work that we had to do recently to prepare a large volume of material for the province, for the Ontario Provincial Conservation Agency. They've engaged a consultant, Ernst & Young, to collect this information and go through it. And we expect that they're going to provide us with a report back to let us know, I think, how we compare to other conservation authorities in that regard, but they'll also be preparing the preliminary transition plan for each of the regions. So we do expect to see that in late summer or early fall. And that was a lot of work to put that together. So a big thank you to the management team who helped compile that information, and particularly Gloria Dangerfield and Alison Armstrong, who were on a bit of a smaller team to stick handle a lot of that detail. We also sat in with an interview with Ernst & Young, so they could ask us questions about our operations, and we could ask them any questions about the process that we had. Those are the only updates I have on the amalgamation at this point, but I'll continue to update the board as we find out more as we move forward. We do know that the project executives who will be leading the transition committees have been interviewed by OPCA, and we're waiting to hear the results of those. And so we expect mid to late July, we should know who the project executive is for our area. And I think I had mentioned to the board previously that member Shaw and I attended what I'll call a pre-transition committee meeting with other representatives of what will be the transition committee from the other 5 conservation authorities. And we have another one coming up on July 6th. In terms of other work here, we've held interviews recently for a water resources technician position. This is part of our succession plan for following John's retirement. So part of the work will be handled by Ian Erickson, and part of the work will be handled by our new water resources technician. And we expect the person to be starting on July 6th. So more news to come on that, probably at the July meeting. The memorial tree ceremony, the last memorial tree ceremony, was held by the foundation on Sunday, June 14th. It was well attended. The event went very well. The people at the event spoke very highly of it. And Mayor Sue Carlton from the Township of Georgian Bluffs was on hand to provide remarks and speak at the event. For myself, I sit on the board of directors for the Ontario Aggregate Resources Corporation, and they meet quarterly as a board to go over finances predominantly. And so I attended that meeting on June 18th, so last Thursday. Ontario Council meeting was this past Monday, and attended that, as well as every year, all the Conservation Authority CAOs from across the province meet for a workshop in the summer to learn, but also to collaborate and network with each other. And so that happened Monday following the Conservation Ontario meeting, as well as Tuesday yesterday. So I attended that. Next Conservation Ontario meeting will be September 21st. If, as board members, you ever have any questions about the work of Conservation Ontario, our relationship to them, or anything else, feel free to reach out to me and we can talk about that.
Questions, member Mackey?
Thank you, Chair. Tim, can you just elaborate on you mentioned Aggregate Resources Committee? For what the role or what the mandate of that committee is? And
Sure.
Support?
Yeah, so the PORC is the acronym because it's much shorter to say, but it's the Ontario Aggregate Resources Corporation. So
PORC pays the fees for aggregate that's removed, I believe.
Sort of.
Municipality.
Yeah, sort of. They hold it. So PORC is a trust. And so they were set, the Ministry of Natural Resources used to collect money from aggregate operators based on tonnage of aggregate removed from an aggregate project. And that money would then be, some of it would stay with the Ministry of Natural Resources and some of it goes out to your municipalities, depending on the tonnage removed within your municipality. A number of years ago, and I don't know the full history, Torque was established to act as a trust for that money. So Torque's role is to hold on to that money, invest that money so that that money grows, and then use the proceeds of that investment for rehabilitating aggregate pits that may have expired and not had rehabilitation, so typically historic aggregate pits. And so the board of directors sits to provide governance and financial oversight of that organization, similar to what you do here. So most of that organization is made up of members from the aggregate community, with the exception of an ex officio member from the Ministry of Natural Resources, a member representing AMO, and a member representing the environmental sector, which has been for the last decade or more, Conservation Ontario. So Conservation Ontario will appoint a member, one of the CAOs from one of the conservation authorities, to sit on that board of directors. And so for this 4-year term, I'm that member.
So if I can,
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, so Tim, when you talk about the rehabilitation of abandoned pits, who would make that application to Torque to do that?
So that I'm gonna be honest, I don't fully know how that works, how that process starts. Some of it I think is forced because the ministry requires it. And others, I think, is a more voluntary type of thing, and then Torque through their MAP program has funding that goes towards that. So they would go in, they would plan the whole site. My understanding is they typically would do that with the landowner, so it's a balance of what the landowner would want to see. Depending on where it is in the province, like in Southern Ontario, I think they're predominantly converted back to agriculture. Where it's possible, topsoil being the primary issue. But in Northern Ontario, they're working with some of the universities and colleges in Sudbury and Thunder Bay to figure out new solutions to make sure that plant life takes, and it's not what they're calling a green desert. You're just putting Kentucky bluegrass or something like that, but trying to get something that mimics the forest floor.
Councillor Farmer, then Councillor Yurt.
Through the chair, at a previous meeting when we talked about plans for the day camp, we floated the idea of making sure that day camp spots were full, and also the potential of letting the community know that it's possible to sponsor a spot for a kid at the day camp. I'm curious whether, with all of the other physical changes to where staff were working in their workload, whether staff had the capacity to move that project forward, and if there's anything we should know or be amplifying if we know that there are some spots open and that there are kids who would benefit from that experience in our community who might not have families who can afford to send them to the day camp themselves. Is there anything we should know about that project?
Gloria.
So we have not had the time to follow up on that. Chelsea and I have both been very busy, but we were speaking just this week about moving forward with reaching out to the schools this week about recommendations of students who would work well within our day camp. We didn't have a huge amount of success when we did that previously, but people we could reach out to about subsidizing spots for day camp. So that's what we're looking into at this point. So we were gonna reach out, see if we get any feedback and potentially some other organizations, because we have received some communication from some other organizations that have some children in mind. That would be great for camp. So we are gonna be following up with that very soon. We do want to fill up those spaces because camp runs better if we have full campers.
And in terms of sponsors, the opportunity for organizations or businesses to sponsor spots in the camp, would they reach out to particular staff members here, or?
They can reach out to myself or Chelsea. Absolutely. And we have a general education email that they can send email to as well.
And is it appropriate for board members to let folks know that might be in our networks? Or is it more appropriate for the GSCA to put a press release out saying you can have a,
I think
have
both,
a kid get there?
I think both will be good. Anywhere, we often haven't gotten a lot of uptake on sort of media releases or social media stuff in terms of educational sponsorships. So I often find word of mouth is better, but I'm willing to explore all of it avenues.
And should board members wait until a press release goes out that we can amplify, or can we let the people we know now?
Let me follow up on that, and then we can put some communication out to the board.
Okay.
Amir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This will probably go through CEO Lantier to Gloria, but you did mention the turtle program, and I know that Chelsea did reach out to me for, reached out to our director. And I'm just curious whether there were any programs were developed through that. Cause I kind of got left out of the conversation. I just made the introduction. So was Meaford participating in the turtle program that you were aware of?
So I believe that, one of the reasons for reaching out there was that we didn't have permission to place protectors on the roadways. So I'll have to follow up on whether Meaford did go through that process. We have permission from the counties. We've been denied permission from the MPO for that, for highways. So she has been working through each municipality that we didn't get permission from. So that's where that was coming from. I can follow up and find out where we went, what happened with Meaford.
I appreciate it. And yeah, if there's any concerns, just please let me know and see what we can find out.
I do know that there's no shortage of turtles nesting and nest protectors out there, but yes, we want to get them out everywhere.
May I have a second? So Tim, when you were talking earlier about this, the relocation back, I'm just curious. So when you walk in the main entrance, which is beautiful, and again, I just took a cursory look when I walked in, didn't really look around. So we talked about there's gonna be like art and artifacts, historical, blah, blah, blah. Do we know kind of what the timeframe of kind of employing all of that, into the, I know we've just moved in, I'm not saying why it's done yet. I'm just saying, is there a timeline on when you're kind of accomplishing that?
We hope to have an open house for the building in September. It would be nice if we had it done by then.
Okay.
Some of it will have to balance with staff's other workload as well. So some of the things, definitely, like we've already received we had Grady Roots Museum holding on to some artifacts for us while we were away.
Yeah.
And that's already been returned, and staff have put that into place. The tree of giving, that was on the wall in the previous office, will be going on the wall in the lobby here. We've got a spot for it. So hopefully by September, but I don't know if all of our visions will be done by then.
You know, guys retired probably helped.
Yeah. Well, that was easy. Member Dade and member Maxwell.
Quick follow-up question regarding roads and turtles, so presumably through you two, Gloria. If we haven't heard that our municipality hasn't given permission for nest protectors, does that mean they probably have?
Correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Member Maxwell?
I just want, I'm sorry, Chair, I just wanted to ask a question about these turtles, that caught my interest. Is it like the turtle program for all turtles, like snapping turtles, painted turtles, and in particular, blinding turtles?
Don't think we discriminate, but I'll
No.
pass that on to Gloria.
So we don't discriminate, no. We haven't had any, recordings of landing turtles in the watershed. They used to be here.
Right.
So there is historic, locations that they have been spotted, but yeah, that'd be great if we saw some, but yes, it's all species. And so what we do is we have a app on phones called iNaturalist. And we have a project and we invite people to it. And then, when they see the turtle, they can record it. And then when they put the nest protector down, they record it, they take a photo, and then we have all the areas mapped out and the species and everything. And then we're also hoping to record emergence as well. So if we see the the turtles emerging at the end of the season, then we hope to capture that as well.
Thank you.
Good. Member Farmer?
Through the chair, I know that most of our correspondence and communication with the MPP has been taken up by the issue of the amalgamation. I note that on Paul's social media, he a week or two ago had a great picture of a Sisley snapping turtle that he stopped to help across the road and was really advocating for folks to participate in turtle protection that way. I'm wondering if GSA staff have made him aware of that program or some of the challenges that we've had getting permission from the MTO, knowing that, or getting the sense that that's an item of personal interest for the MPP, if there's room for some information sharing about the program and challenges that way. Has that happened already? And if not, can it? And if it can, do we need a motion to that effect?
It has not happened at this point.
But we can certainly meet with MPP Vickers too. I don't think we need a motion from the board, but I think most MPPs are always up for the good news stories. So we could certainly reach out to MPP Vickers and see if it's something you'd be interested in.
Yeah, it's one of those things, it's impossible to stay on top of all things all the time. So it's great just to be able to have that approach to you in terms of recognizing them. Oh, the MPO just doesn't allow it, so maybe there's advocacy down the road that he can follow up on.
Down the road?
Member Dubic?
Thank you. So Tim, just about the Ernst and Young. I may have missed this, but could you elaborate a little bit about the information, like sort of the big buckets of information that Ernst and Young is gathering, sort of what their intended output is, and I do hope that they're also using our conservation authority staff time well, and are being respectful, given that it's a lot of resources and time to be able to kind of go through the process. So any comments on that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Essentially, I think what they're trying to understand for each conservation authority in the province is how we operate, what our resources are, what our assets are, what our liabilities are. So everything that you would want to know when one or two or more organizations are merging together, and see how those puzzle pieces fit together. So I think we put together a good package of information to paint a pretty good picture of what we do here at Great Sauble, both in terms of staff capacity, costs, IT infrastructure, finance infrastructure, facial infrastructure, all of that stuff to paint the picture of what we do. It's impossible to, put 70 years worth of knowledge into that package, but I think we should hopefully provide them with enough information to feed into that preliminary transition plan. And then it'll be the work of the transition committee following that to make sure everything else gets captured.
Sure, thank you.
Not seeing any other questions for Tim. So down to item 10, which is the chair's report, and just a couple quick things to touch upon. I was very impressed with the signage that staff have implemented coming in for the public to be aware and guiding them around the parking lot in the building. So well done to staff on that. Thank you very much to Vice Chair Shaw for her work on the transition committee on behalf of the board. And as well, this past Monday on attending Conservation Ontario. It's, as busy as you are, you still sneak a smile in there when these items are approached upon you as to whether you can facilitate them into your schedule. So it's very much appreciated, your ability and willingness to take those on. And I did have a copy of the new vital signs published from Community Foundation Grey Bruce. They launched it, I believe, last Wednesday. May have been the new launch. It's conveniently at my workplace where it should should be right now, instead of in my hands where I had some nice little flags to call out some of the conversation that was in it, but from memory, there's a couple measuring sticks under recreation, which show that in this area, males more so than females have a better state of mental well-being. However, both males and females, I think comparatively across the province, performed statistically measured better than our provincial counterparts, as well as what people like to do in Grey Bruce. In terms of under the recreation theme, it was still getting outside, using trails, hiking, activity, skiing, and several of these activities were activities that are not made possible, but further enhanced by the work of the Conservation Authority through opening our properties up for people's well-being. So I thought it comes through in the themes in the new vital signs report. If you haven't had a chance to grab it and look through some of the material in it, I encourage you to do so. There's also then the theme of climate change and environment. And that doesn't probably need to be spoken to anyone in this room in terms of the importance and the contribution that we do. But there's some impactful numbers in there in terms of how we do place ourselves relative to our provincial counterparts, and we perform somewhat favorably. So I think that's a little telling of some of the work that the Conservation Authority does in our area. So any questions from board members?
Well,
Member Maxwell?
I was just gonna mention something. I was at an organization AGM recently. And one of the directors was mentioning that they're now writing prescriptions, the doctors, to actually go out into the outdoors. So it's a new concept, and you would think the Conservation Authority would fit well into that, and parks, and I see Tim's got his hand up, so I'll quit.
It's one of the better medicines that can be recommended or prescribed, Tim.
Thank you. Yeah, we had actually reached out to Public Health Grey Bruce about that. But the time we reached out, the timing wasn't good because it was during COVID. And they had clearly their hands full with other things, but it is something that we'll probably want to revisit in the future. Because yeah, there's no shortage of research, and it just keeps coming out showing that people spending time in nature benefit from it. The stress levels go down, happiness goes up, depression goes down. And I mean, it only makes sense, right? We've spent about 70,000 years in nature and 100 years in cities. So it makes good sense. But yeah, that's certainly something I'm sure we'll be talking about throughout the community again in the near future.
Yeah. Vice Chair John?
Just to add on your report, Chair Greg, and maybe to Tim, if you can get this in writing, that we might be able to share it. Something that came up on the meeting on Monday was, and I maybe didn't write this down exactly as she stated it, but Angela had stated that Ontario, being the most developed province in Canada, has the lowest overland flooding insurance claims in the country. And that jumped out to me, and actually I chatted with another individual on that call after, and also they picked up on that as something that I don't think gets talked about enough. And obviously I think the attributing that to conservation authorities and the role that we play in Ontario in protecting from flooding. So that's something that that we maybe could get that to have that stat accurate, and something that, as we're talking with our municipalities about the budget in the next couple of months, is I think a key detail that we could be sharing more. So yeah.
Interesting. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is something, yeah, we know very well as conservation authorities, and the challenge, communication challenge that we've always had is expressing the value of the damage that didn't happen,
Right.
right? So it's very easy to be able to express things that do happen, but when you're like, well, there's, you know, billions or $100 billion of damage that didn't happen. Like a great example, and it's hard, but it's hard to compare apples to apples, is you have big storm events come through Ontario, and there are damages, and people's lives are about that. But they're much, much lower when you compare it to something like what happened in Calgary, right? Where they talk about the billions and billions of dollars in damage. It's very rare in Ontario. It's not that it doesn't happen, but it's dramatically reduced. And so we have been struggling both locally and at the provincial level with like, what are the actual metrics to express the damage that didn't happen? Because either development hasn't occurred in the floodplains or flood structures have been put in place to lessen that. Like a great easy local example, not in our watershed, but is in Paisley, where you have two rivers coming together, massive floodplain area, and the town is protected by a dike system or a berm system that goes around the village. These are not unique or unusual throughout the province of Ontario. And when we hear about, when we talk to people from other jurisdictions, whether within Canada or around the world, they're always blown away by the Conservation Authority model and what it does for this province. So anyway, that was a long roundabout way of saying that, yes, we can probably get that statement from them.
Member Yurg and then member Maxwell.
To that point, thank you, Mr. Chair. It would be interesting to know truly, was that based on a per capita comparison? Or are they literally just saying it was the lowest lowest overland insurance claims? Because if it was basically the lowest claims, that's even more impressive if you're doing it as opposed to a direct comparator. And we just, with our population and development, that would be a shocking to me that we would have the lowest.
Yeah, that was where I didn't catch that detail, so.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And I would think our insurance rates would reflect that then, right? Like our premiums theoretically would be higher
Yeah.
theoretically.
You seemingly are told our premiums are higher to reflect that.
Alex.
Thank you, Chair. Would there be any opportunity for the conservation authorities to provide some education on the Land Drainage Act in urban areas for municipalities? I just know that we are, every other day, we're getting some complaint about drainage.
I'll go to Tim, but that might almost invite a conversation for additional business in a separate meeting, but
Okay,
go ahead, Tim.
Overland drainage isn't really the mandate of the Conservation Authority, so I would recommend that if the municipality wants feedback on issues like that, like neighbor to neighbor issue of overland drainage, that you would speak to legal counsel about that.
Right, so we are to item 11, which is, we've got nothing at this time in closed. So there's nothing under item 12, so I would declare that at 2:43, we are adjourned.